welcome to our Surfacing Creative Leadership conversation on the caring connection dimension of the LCP. We are really glad that you're here for this conversation and for this webinar today. It is our last of the year for Surfacing Creative Leadership. And I have to admit, when we were deciding about the dimension for December, I was particularly enthusiastic about caring connection because I thought, what a perfect vibe to end the year on. During this time when there are so many holidays between November and January, when families are gathering and friends are gathering, when the world seems to take a collective moment to pause and reflect, caring connection just seems like the right dimension to wrap our Surfacing Creative Leadership conversations in 2025. So I ask that you head over to the chat and tell us what prompted you to join us today and maybe what you're hoping to gain from this conversation. It's always helpful when you respond to questions and put your thoughts and ideas into the chat. We find that these webinars are so much richer when there's an active chat and when you're sharing your insight and your knowledge with us and with each other. So please do let us know where you're calling in from today and also what you're hoping to get out of this conversation about caring connection. My name is Sarah. I'm Senior Content Editor at Leadership Circle, and I will be your host today. And I am located in Tacoma, Washington, in the upper left corner of the continental United States, where it's finally beginning to get a little bit lighter outside. Certainly a gray and chilly day, perfect Pacific Northwest day, in my opinion. Today's webinar marks the 8th Surfacing Creative Leadership conversation that we've had this year, unpacking the dimensions of the LCP. So far, we have explored purposeful and visionary, conservative, personal learner, fosters team play, perfect, critical. Just last month was courageous authenticity, and now in a few minutes, caring connection. If you've missed any of our earlier content, head over to our Leadership Circle YouTube channel, where you can catch up on the Surfacing Creative Leadership playlist. And not just recordings of these webinars, but we also have videos that are recorded conversations with Bill Adams and Bob Anderson, who are discussing each of the dimensions we've covered, and our data wizardry videos with psychometrician Joseph Lehman, who takes a deep dive into a few particular and curious data points about each of the dimensions we've discussed. So check out the YouTube channel and also the playlist, and you can bookmark it and check back often for new videos. Plus, you can watch our social channels and the blog on the website for even more content. Whew, that's a lot. Before we get fully started, I do want to remind you of a few housekeeping items. First, we do ask that you put yourself on mute if you're not on mute already. It's easy to forget, especially when there are so many things going on in such a busy time, but it does make it easier for all of us if everyone is on mute. So please double check and make sure that you are muted. Secondly, if you feel comfortable doing so, please turn on your camera. I understand that we're hitting people at different time zones and different parts of the day. So maybe you're cooking or driving or doing something else and don't feel comfortable on video. That's totally fine. But it is a lot more fun for us to look out to a sea of faces instead of to blank screens. So if you feel comfortable, do please turn on your camera. And then finally, remember that this webinar is being recorded and will be available for a rewatch within about a week or so. We'll send an email to everyone who registered, and that will include a link to the recording and also to a downloadable PDF of session takeaways, key points that we discussed, and a lot of good stuff from the webinar. With that, I think we are ready to begin. So, welcome again to our Surfacing Creative Leadership conversation on the caring connection dimension of the Leadership Circle profile. Listen, you've heard me say it before, and I will continue saying it. Our world needs creative leadership. And we at Leadership Circle, we know that the coaches and leaders like you are in the best position possible to provide that, whether that's through your own leadership and leadership development, or in the way that you guide others to grow into theirs. With our Surfacing Creative Leadership series, we're hosting a series of conversations to unpack, demystify, and surface insights from within the dimensions of the LCP, one dimension at a time. Today, we're exploring caring connection, the creative competency that brings warmth and humanity into the workplace, helping to create the safety and belonging that really allows people to thrive. So to get us started, I'm going to ask this question, and please put your thoughts in the chat. How does caring connection show up in your leadership and in your leadership development? How does caring connection come out of you? While you're doing that, it is my pleasure to welcome and introduce our guests today, Tyson Andrus and Patty OG. First, I am thrilled to welcome Tyson Andrus, principal with Leadership Circle and a valued member of our certification faculty. In fact, Tyson was half of the team who led my own LCP certification cohort earlier this year, so I have personal experience with him. He has a wealth of experience helping leaders strengthen their capabilities, navigate complexity, and accelerate their growth. He's worked with hundreds of leaders across industries, from Fortune 500 companies to mission-driven organizations, large and small, designing development programs, coaching, facilitating meaningful feedback conversations, all of it. Tyson pairs a strong business insight with a practical and, frankly, a deeply human approach, helping leaders build on what's already working and also stretch into what's next. And man, I gotta tell you, just before we started this, he was teasing me about stretching. So I feel really vindicated in having written that intro and using stretching next. And then joining Tyson and me today is someone many of you already know and love, Patty OG. Patty is an executive coach, a leadership strategist, and a longtime Leadership Circle faculty member. She brings more than 2 decades of experience helping leaders and teams grow with clarity, integrity, and purpose. Before joining the world of leadership development, she led large-scale change efforts in government, as well as social impact and education organizations, work that shaped a grounded, compassionate approach to coaching. Listen, you can't be in a room with Patty and not feel her heart. She's known for pairing real talk with real care, creating space where leaders, again, can stretch, can align themselves, and can really move toward wholeness. What a pair for our last conversation for Surfacing Creative Leadership this year. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Sarah. Hey, community. Good to see you all.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Yeah, it's great to see a lot of faces from the timeline of being with Leadership Circle. So there's a lot of recognizable faces that I go, oh, I wish I could talk to you just one-on-one. So it's great to see a lot of you and to have new faces as well.
Exactly.
Well, we are honored to have you both with us, and I'm really excited for this conversation. As we've talked before, caring connection, I think is a deceptively interesting dimension, in my opinion, because it feels like it may be easily defined. It feels like maybe it should be familiar. Caring connection, those are 2 words that I know the meaning of, so surely I know the meaning of the dimension, right? But maybe not. So let's start with the basics. In your work, debriefing, coaching leaders, how do you introduce them to this dimension? What do we mean when we talk about caring connection?
Would you like me to jump in?
Yes, please do.
Yeah. So for me and Sarah, talking to you and Patty, you and I have been together across many pieces of work. So you know my pattern. In trying to help any leader understand something, I've found that if I try to go with my definition of 2 words, then it can start to get a little bit like, well, I see it a little bit differently. I see a little bit this way. And so if anyone really wants to dive into any competency or tendency, I find it's really helpful to go to the questions that are asked in the survey. So the 3 questions that are asked in the survey for caring connection on that 1 to 5 scale from a self-assessment point of view, 1 being never, 5 being always, is that I connect deeply with others, I form warm and caring relationships, I am compassionate. Those are the 3 questions that are asked in the survey. And so whenever I have a chance to be grounded with a leader around defining something, we sit with those 3 questions.
That's a great entry point. 100%. And just a level set, because we know that certain leaders come in with their own language, right? And what seems intuitive to us might not be to them. One of the things I like to talk about with leaders is caring connection is not just about being nice. It's about true care, genuine care and concern for another person, regardless of how they feel about you.
Yeah.
Right? That stands above and beyond the relationship, the dynamics, maybe the conflict, or even the deep care you have for that. It's a genuine concern for another human being's well-being and their thriving, and a curiosity about them as a whole person.
I love that. I get excited when you talk about that, Patty, because there is that. There's a reason why it's so close to the reactive, right? There's a reason why it's positioned right there. It can be a slippery slope, but there is a key reason why it is defined as separately creative. It's how do I hold that relationship with the pen for our relationship. So often when it drifts into pleasing, it's I give the pen of my book and I say, hey, write what you like about me. As long as you like me, I'm okay. And to Patty's point of what caring connection can really do is it goes, I value our relationship, but I'm also the author of this relationship. And so it starts to have that key separation where I can connect with you, as Patty was saying. And if you don't like it, that's okay. But my gift is offering my heart freely with no strings attached.
Yeah, 100%. I think some of the key words for me that come up with that is a power with relationship, right? That ability to, yes, I care about you and I hold my own point of view. That's how we're moving from complying up into creative, what Tyson is talking about. And I think in the manual is really helpful. There's a few key terms in the manual. Mutuality. That comes up for me and it really hits like, yes, what is the both and? What is the reciprocal health of this relationship? Not from a utility standpoint, but how am I able to hold my voice, my true thoughts, right? What might be edgy for me, as well as hold my care and true generosity towards you from a place of well-being. And we know that compassion, care, love, whatever we want to call it, is both warm, but it's also strong. It's also fierce. And it's the marriage of those two things.
I love hearing you guys describe this. This is great. And I'm wondering, can you give maybe a few examples of what this looks like in a leader, in an organization? It's one thing to say care and love, and I think instantly of my friends, and my family. But what does this look like in a workplace from a leader?
Yeah, one key separator, and this one, it's impactful. I think about two different leaders around one that was really good in caring connection, and the way it showed up was that people truly knew that this person cared about them no matter what. And so that didn't mean that leader was not able to make tough decisions. So they were able to bring in some other competencies as well, but their care and their deep core gift of heart was the thing that always resonated across situations. You knew that this person cared for you. And even in the midst of difficult conversations, you still knew you were cared for. And so there's this ability to connect deeply with others, empathize in a way that goes, okay, no matter what, I know you care about me. I think, and it's not the tactical, I use this sometimes, and Patty, you've heard this before in certification. Mm-hmm. I had one leader go, why am I not scoring high in caring connection? I remember everyone's birthdays. And they go, great, that's great that you remember people's birthday, but it was a tactical, hey, quick note, happy birthday, boom, caring connection done. Self-assessment, when I take this leadership circle profile, 90th percentile, because who else remembers everyone's birthday? It's great. But that by itself isn't heart embodied and relationship embodied.
It's a great example, Ty. My thoughts go to a leader that I know and love for many decades, and particularly in one constrained relationship that this leader had. And I was able to be behind the scenes with a team member that they had a type of tenuous, stressful relationship. That team member maybe wasn't relating to this leader in the most creative way. There was tension there. There was some conflict there. There was some question around who was in whose corner. And I remember this leader being able to show up for that team member and to support them with something that was really big for them. There was a program that this leader was a part of. There was something that they were doing. They were going to present. They had been preparing. And I remember that this leader, in this particular case, as a colleague or as even a mentor of mine, I thought, well, why are you going out of your way to show up to this, right? Why are you going out of your way to support this person? This person may have been like not your biggest fan, or maybe even done some things that were difficult towards your leadership. And this particular leader said to me, you know what? I care about this person. And it has nothing to do with how they treat me. I get it, but I want to support them. They're a part of my team. We're connected. And whatever our personal relationship is, this is important. And I want to be there. And went out of their way to go ahead and show up and support and be in the audience and show care. So it didn't have anything to do with matching energy, as we say nowadays, right? Or how you feel about me dictates how I'm going to show up for you. Right. It was an ethos about who am I as a leader? And how do I show up and care about the whole person, being able to also remember that we're all on a journey and a trajectory. Right? Mm-hmm. And when a leader can remember their previous iterations and their journey, then a leader can have more compassion for when other folks are still on a particular path.
Yeah, I love that, Patty, because it's the true essence of caring connection is a heart freely given with no strings attached.
That's it.
So too often we go for where it starts to drift back into more maybe of a pleasing tendency. It's here's my heart, the strings are attached that you like me. Yeah. Like, as long as you like me, I'm okay. And so a heart that's freely given with no strings attached is, here's my heart. You are free to take it or not, but I offer it. I offer it, and I offer it consistently and constantly.
Yeah. I like hearing you mention, Patty, if a leader can remember previous iterations. And it makes me think about the inner beliefs and assumptions that can contribute to a leader's ability not only to be caring, but also to demonstrate that caring. How do you see some of that play out in leaders? Those inner beliefs, those assumptions that creep up.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that's spot on, right? Because we can see lots of external behaviors, but the real question is, what is the fuel behind that? And that is the beliefs, right? The inner beliefs, the inner narratives, the inner values, whatever that is. And so for a leader that perhaps is showing up with a stronger caring connection, it is, I care about the whole person, right? I care deeply. I want to see this person. I want them to sense my support. And your thriving is our thriving. Is this idea of this mutuality again, that we're a part of one tapestry, we're a part of one system. I'm generally fulfilled and joyful by seeing another person's development. That's something I hear from leaders with strong caring connection. I derive joy. It's fulfilling. Mm-hmm. This fills my cup when I see other people grow, when I see other people thrive, when they feel seen and heard and held. And it even can ping for a leader a desire to stand into courageous authenticity, or even more recently with a client, into systems work because of their care and their concern about the whole person. It calls into play what's happening in the broader system and what needs to change as a systems leader as well.
Mm-hmm. A couple other beliefs that always stand out to me that I've heard consistently with those that score high in caring connection. Not to oversimplify it a little bit on this first one, but there is this deeper belief that people are great. Mm-hmm. And so it's this opportunity to go, yeah, I really like people. And that can engender so much of, because I know you can be great, I want you to be great. And so it's not about, I want you to be great so everyone knows how greatly I taught you, right? That's right. It's the heart with no need to attract attention to itself, right? So this opportunity to go, which connects into another belief, I really want people to succeed. Mm-hmm. And so how can I help you be successful?
I love that. I wish we could kind of stay here forever, but we have a lot to talk about. So I want to shift a little and dig in maybe a bit. And this is probably a good segue. So Patty, when you and I were chatting last week, you mentioned the significance, or the importance of leaders finding their center of gravity. And as we're talking about beliefs, certainly that can influence this caring connection dimension, or how leaders show up in this way. Can you say more about that? Can you talk about this center of gravity and what you mean when this is at play?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've often talked about the leadership circle profile being a snapshot in time. And that is true. But sometimes what we think is that it could change wildly, right, from day to day. That's not so much the case. I tend to think of it as a snapshot of a season. So what's the season that this leader is in, and the season that their evaluators or stakeholders are seeing them or experiencing them in? And obviously the context matters. So contexts or environments that are more challenging or maybe more adverse to creative leadership make it harder to show up as with more of your full creative self. There's more of a challenge, and that makes logical sense. Whereas an environment or a culture that is maybe has done some more of the creative leadership work, has sort of progressed or has developed that, is more open to that, can see it, has that common understanding and value for it, even if, we've never arrived, we're still working on it, can make it easier. So one of the things to sense into and to explore with the client is, okay, if this is a snapshot in time, what is usually your center of gravity, kind of like your home base, right, in this dimension? Do you operate from this place most of the time, right? Or is it sort of a dance back and forth? Are you still maybe in a transition period, right, where you're still growing into this creative competence? And so you have a little bit of back and a little bit of forth in the way that you're operating and your behaviors and what can be experienced from you, maybe in some of the beliefs and the inner narrative that's happening. So center of gravity is kind of, where are you seated most of the time? Where are you rooted? And of course, you can step a little bit more into the reactive. Maybe sometimes you're more resourced to be in the creative. And that could be another exploration for a leader. In caring connection, what is your center of gravity? How do you feel you generally show up in this area? What is your sense of comfort and groundedness here? What throws you off? What resources you? What enables you to thrive and to really lean into caring connection? Right? What are some of the things that maybe that could come up in the environment that could challenge you and throw you off a little bit? Do you know that? Are you aware of that? And one of the things when we talk about center of gravity is, once we're growing and we're rooting a center of gravity in caring connection, or anywhere in the creative, we might step back, but we can recover more quickly. And we have more of an awareness of what is happening. And we're able to come back and come from a place of awareness, from choice, from intention, and from heart. That's my kind of take on center of gravity.
I love that. I think that's really insightful and really helpful, especially when thinking about using caring connection kind of as an entry point into a debrief or a coaching conversation. And you've kind of started to talk about this already. Asking a leader, where are you? Like, where's your home base? How do you normally in this dimension? But when you're looking at a profile, maybe even before that initial conversation or before a conversation where you bring this up, what makes caring connection stand out? If you see a high or a low score, and on a profile, what might that prompt you to start thinking of to ask the coach, or what can that tell you about their operating system, the way they approach their work?
Well, couple of things. I think relationship currency can't be understated. And so when a leader has relationship currency in a system, they can do quite a bit within that system. And so if they don't have strong relationships, then they'll most likely have less currency to do what they envision or need to do. So one of those findings through scaling leadership is that leaders scale through relating. And one of those mechanisms is through caring connection. So I would think, if I whether I see it high or low, a little bit of my cadence or kind of curiosity underneath that would be, I wonder how this conversation is going to go and what kind of relationships they have within the system. And that can play out very differently depending on what else is going on within their profile and how they're showing up, for sure. But the caring connection can be quite the way to gain a lot of currency to do things. Because so those three questions: if I'm connected deeply with others, I have warm and caring relationships, I'm compassionate, and I start to try to move the needle on things, and I'm genuinely doing that, people will be more likely to know it's coming from a good intent. Because what happens so often for leaders that don't have caring connection is there's a really big gap between intent and impact. And so being able to have a really warm, caring relationship, almost like if we were to stand shoulder to shoulder, there's less gap for you to assume negative things. And so I can, as I move into leadership moves that I need to make, it's not a guarantee that caring connection equals that I'll be high in the other ones, right? But if I have that, then usually my shoulder is closer to your shoulder. And then we can be able to do some really special things because you know I'm coming from better intent because we have the basis of relationship, which then allows us to have psychological safety and trust.
That's really, really well explained. And I love that description of standing shoulder to shoulder because it helps really make it tangible and real. But something else that can be maybe difficult to make tangible is that there can be a huge gap between how we see ourselves and how others see us. And so, looking at a profile, when you see a gap like that, maybe a leader really believes they have high, caring connection, but their survey says that no, others don't see that in them. What can that gap suggest, and how do you address that as a coach?
Yeah, well, definitely, right? So when we're looking at a gap and when we're seeing something that's maybe 25 percentile points or greater, then we say, okay, that's a place we're going to get our flashlight out and take a look and co-explore with the client, right? Yeah. So it can mean a lot of things. And the question is, when we're dancing with the client and we're getting curious about what it could be, is getting under the surface of that, right? So things that I've seen are, is this an old tape you have about yourself? Right? Maybe you see yourself as lower in caring connection than others are experiencing you. Is this a previous version of yourself, or maybe something you knew about yourself, or criticism that you had of that others had of you in the past? And maybe you worked on it and you haven't updated the narrative to say, okay, I've actually grown in this area. Or is there something of that people are sensing is great caring connection, but you're still holding something back? Could that be a part of it? And then the reverse is true as well. If like a leader is scoring a lot higher, they're scoring themselves a lot higher in caring connection than their evaluators are experiencing themselves. Sometimes what I hear from clients is like, but I'm nice to people, right? I'm nice to people and we have lunch and, I try to keep it positive. But then what we start to unpack is, are you willing to be transparent? Is there a depth to that relationship? Are you willing to model the way in true connection, which isn't just about being nice or cordial or even professional? So we can even get into unpacking what's been modeled to this leader. What did they learn about what it means to be kind and caring in the workplace? What are the guardrails around that? What are the boundaries around professionalism and what that meant for a leader? And then go into like, what is the depth there? And what is the modeling of transparent humanity in the workplace?
Well, it's as a consistent thing that Patty and I like to think about when we're looking at self-assessment versus other assessment. It can be easier for us to anchor as one of them's the true version and the other one's the wrong version. Doesn't matter which one, whatever one we tend to do, right? But there's deeply valuable insight in coaching the process, right? Of noticing gap. So this opportunity to notice the gap, because then you can get into what they think that they're doing or what they had done in a previous role that's no longer communicating to this role. There is such great gold in sitting with the difference between self-assessment and others assessment. I'll keep it applied to caring connection, but just overall, there is gold in gap. And so being able to lean into that, see it, it does not mean always that they're completely unaware. There are plenty of other narratives of what could be going on and why self-assessment is different than others' assessments. So just to plus one, what Patty was saying is that there's so many reasons of why we could be self-assessing differently than others. And then just to give you more along the lines of not noticing it, thinking it was landing well and it didn't. I was just thinking of a leader that had a really high self-assessment view of caring connections. Others didn't experience it. And what they said, well, Tyson, my door's always open. And we got in a conversation, and how many people walk through that door when it's open? And what came back was, well, not too often, but it's open. Mm-hmm. And so there's this opportunity for us to really sit in with the intent was beautiful, right? For this leader, the intent was, I'm going to be available to my people. And when you got underneath it, did they operate from moment to moment in between those doors being open that made people want to go in? A little bit not, right? And also, did they communicate why their door was open? No. So that gap between intent and impact was quite large.
Yeah, and that's huge. And also what I've noticed for leaders is that modeling type. The door is open, but we leaders who model care and connection walk out the door to the folks.
Yes.
They meet their people where they are and model that. It's putting out those bids for connection. It's putting out those bids for care.
Yep.
It's transparency. I love what's happening in the chat. Michaela talking about that vulnerability. And there is risk to that, right? Maybe not existential risk, but a leader has to put something into the game, right? Has to put something on the line and opening up a bit and being okay with maybe even saying something in service, having an edgy conversation, something that feels edgy for them. I know a leader who is beautiful at doing something so courageous and edgy, but it comes from a place of care and connection because she cares so much about the people that she works with and her team members. She was willing to have some conversations about what else might be going on in our system, in the relationships, that even open the aperture around maybe this is something to look into. Maybe this is something that we need to do better as a team addressing neurodiversity, right? And learning more about it, not to make any one person have to do all the work around it, but as a team, how do we do this? How do we open up about this? And so that's a part of it as well. So could it have gone wrong? Yes. Could it have been taken wrong? Yes. But Caring Connection say, I would be remiss to not step into this area because it's about the thriving of all of us together.
Right. And that's something that, Patty, you and I have said is to other coaches, but it absolutely goes for leadership as well. You cannot take people to places you yourself are not willing to go. So is the leader willing to lean in with heart? And Dave, you have that move towards others. The leader goes first to set the tone. And so what's that opportunity? You go, all right, starting with self as the experiment. What's my opportunity to lean in some greater care and connection, which has some vulnerability to it and has some edge to it, where we might have a fantastic mission, vision, values on the wall around whatever it would say. And then we go, and I tell all my people, just to give you, like, we're family around here. Those are all great sentences and can have some things on the wall. But what is the leader doing themselves to have heart that can be given freely with no strings attached? And it has some inherent risk. As Bob would say, that all creatives, and especially Caring Connection, lives with the inherent risk. It doesn't detach from it or believe it no longer exists, but lives with the inherent risk of exposing heart.
I could listen to you two talk about this all day, but I do want to move on because one of the things that we have found to be really useful in these conversations is thinking about the interrelationship and the interconnection between dimensions. So we've talked a little bit about, we have a couple of sample profiles that we might pull up and take a look at, but I'm curious if you can speak to some particularly strong or maybe insightful or interesting relationships between Caring Connection and another competency or tendency, another dimension on the profile.
Yeah. For me, there's a few things that I look at, and that, the beauty of our model is that, there's a wonderful tapestry, and all of the creative competencies are positively correlated with each other. But when we look at opposing dynamics, looking at how the reactive interrupts the creative and how the creative can dampen and sort of heal some of that or strengthen, can counteract some of the reactive tendencies. One of the ways that we look at is often we look at relating and controlling as an opposing dynamic. And there's definitely that, right? If controlling is higher, relating tends to be dampened or interruptive, and the reverse is true. So as the relating grows, controlling tends to recede. But in Caring Connection, yes, I see controlling having an interaction, but also protecting. And particularly, I've worked with leaders where what gets in the way is the distance. wanting to have an arm's length distance in the workplace, wanting to sort of keep themselves safe, back it up, not get too deep, right? Not get too personal with folks. That's one of the interactions I tend to see from reactive to creative. That's one of the areas. And then others in the creative for sure. But Ty, I would toss it out to you as well if you want.
Yeah, the opposing dynamics would come to my mind first as well, of where very, very often leaders go, well, I know I'm doing that reactive, but why is that creative not happening? And so it can be really, really helpful for when they start to hit that note of they're really dialed in on self-assessment with their reactive tendencies, where they go, yeah, I know I can do that. But less dialed into its impact on the creative, the points that Patty just had around protecting, distance, controlling, drive. They can have such strong negative correlations to caring connection. Just had one leader, it was beautiful. We were going around in a team session and they were going, yeah, I think I can kind of, in driven, I think I can miss what people are really saying, but I'll go pay attention to it. And then we came back a month later, a month and a half later, and they went, so everyone, it happened to me. And we're like, oh, tell us more. And they said, so, and they were so excited that they got to observe this, right? They went, I was talking to my leader and I was trying to just let her know what I was up to. And she cut me off and said, yeah, I know where you're going with that. And then they took the ball and ran away with it. And they had the aha, that's what I do to people. And so it robs caring connection, because caring connection has a good pace to it. In order for us to be connected, I don't run faster than you and I can stand shoulder to shoulder. So what's our opportunity to have good pace? It doesn't mean I abandon pace. It's just the opportunity to go slow enough where you and I can go do the walk together, which is caring connection. Controlling, and especially high drive, moves so fast it's hard to be connected.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
I want to just jump in because we have a really good question from the chat asking, can you talk about this in the context of formal authority? So essentially leading from the middle, how to keep heart open and be effective leading up with those who are not willing or not yet capable to fit themselves.
Yeah, this is a challenging one. I actually just recently had a conversation with a wonderful client about sort of leading up and inviting their manager into a certain way of interacting with each other and having space. So with caring connection, I think in particularly, there's a challenge for middle management. We know that, right? Because there is not always the authority, formal authority that they would like to have, but there's a lot of responsibility. And so they're sandwiched in the middle. And so I think one of the things is to support your client in holding themselves and what is good for the system. Again, caring connection is not taking the weight of the world, it's not taking on every fight, but it comes from a place of what is healthy and good for the humanity of the manager that I'm working with and seeing them as a human being. And sometimes what you hear from some leaders are, but they're my boss. They should already know this. They should be doing this. They should be doing that. And yet they're not. So what does caring connection mean in that instance? How do you see your manager and their own growth edge and maybe partner with them and know that growth doesn't have to be hierarchical? We can be growth partners to each other no matter where we are in the organizational structure. And more than that, maybe it is modeling an invitation on how to relate with each other. Yeah. And that's also where some vulnerability can come in from a leader's point of view, working with their manager. And there's a way in a caring connection, you don't just have to be out there and be courageously connecting and be flawless and think that, there's no skin in the game. There's a way a leader can be really open and honest and say, look, this is a little edgy for me to talk about, but I think it's really important. So can we have this conversation? I want to share a little bit about how I'd like to deepen our connection. And I really care and admire who you are as a leader. And I've been noticing something, and I can be totally wrong about this, but can we have this conversation?
Yeah, I love that, because there is that, just go one. It doesn't have to be some magnified display of heart to go, I'm going to take this caring connection from the 20th percentile and bring it up to the 90th, right? It can be, I had one leader that was just noticing that they weren't very present. And so and fully, especially sandwiched in the middle leaders, they're getting lots of calls from the top. They're also getting lots of demands from those they lead. And so just for that person and that time and that era, it just made sense that how they'd work caring connection is just to be more present. So when they were with the meetings with their leaders or with their people, it was trying to close down Teams, trying to close down Slack, and just be present for 30 minutes. So that opportunity to go, okay, I'm here. And that does create shift and a different experience for those that are around us. And I'll call this out too. For any creative move, we can't as coaches just go, you know what, just do it. Because we don't have any sense of what real risk is going on. If their leadership is genuinely toxic or unsafe, we cannot coach them into going, well, don't care about that. Just keep throwing yourself at the risk of that, right? It is also deeply important that there is a genuine and real tension between purpose and safety. And so, and that purpose can evoke other creatives. It's not just purpose and vision, but purpose can connect us to heart. And purpose connecting us to heart, there is still a tension into risk. And so as coaches, we do have to navigate, okay, what's the inherent risk and what risk do we want to live with? Where experiments do we want to run? That's why we would talk about the modality of this is awareness precedes choice and choice precedes change. So allowing us to get really aware, look at the choices we can make with a little bit of courage, right? Because sometimes if we only operate from risk, it will tell us no move is safe. Like, don't do it at all. So I'll bring in the other side of the coin. The most challenging thing I was told by another coach was, Tyson, are you willing to lose the client in service of the client? So there are moves where we do need to evoke some courage, but we can't just throw them out there and say, but you have to do it either. So it is a dance between that move, especially for any leadership position, because even a senior leader will have a board that they need to report to, investors that they need to report to. Any leader that's a frontline will also be stuck between lots of client interactions and the middle management. So there's so much tension across multiple spots of the system. And how do we help them dance that purpose and safety dance?
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're coming up on quarter till the top of the hour, and so I want to leave enough time for some questions, for some Q&A, because we've had a couple questions come in.
Great.
And I do want to encourage anyone, if you have a burning question, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to it. But before we move on to the Q&A, I do want to hit maybe really right on the nose. You've addressed some great ways of getting into a coaching conversation, of prompting curiosity in leaders, and of really working those coaching techniques. But if we can call it out really specifically, let's say you have a leader who wants to strengthen their caring connection this month or in the next 2 months before their next appointment or session with you. What are a couple, one or two small, high impact practices or tips or reflections or things that you can give them to encourage them to experiment?
Yeah, I have a couple. And as we all know, as coaches, it could go either way. First, I want to just say that how we show up as coaches and modeling caring connection matters and sets the tone for everything. All of you know that already, but it's just even a reminder to myself around how am I sinking in to this depth of around radical humanity and iteration and experimentation and wanting to see the whole person thrive. So first, as a coach, if I'm going to invite my client into that or coach around that, I want to be grounded in that as well, right? Where am I holding back that I would not hold back if I was really operating in care for this human's thriving? And that's a question, maybe even an exploration of a curiosity with a client is around, we could go what's at risk route, of course, but you can also go in the route of what if you had no concern about holding back and you could act and show care that really show the people in your environment that they are valuable as human beings in and out of the workplace. What would be some of the things that you would say if you didn't have to hold anything back? What would you want to say? What would you want to do? How would you want to relate? Like, what is possible? Like tapping into possibility and purpose and passion and love. Like, what if all of that was possible and it would be received well? What would you want? And just tapping into that purpose piece just brings us into the creative, and then we can iterate and practice from that place. Once we tap into what is purpose really bubbling up inside of us, what is that wellspring of genuine joy that comes forward? If you were going to delight in being able to really show care and warmth and concern and connection, what would it feel like first? One body, emotions, feelings. How would work be different? How would life be different? And then from there could be the small practices and pilots of what that means for that leader. What's the next stretch for them in that space?
I would want to call out what Patty just did. Patty, if you didn't feel it, coached all of us up into the creative and then asked us from the creative what's possible. Very often leaders operate from the reactive, almost like you're underwater and looking up at that creative. And if anyone's ever been underneath the water and you look up, the image is distorted. It's hard to really pick out what to do. So allowing us to be elevated out of that water and go, okay, now what's possible from up here? Because you're giving them a breath of maybe something they haven't experienced for a little while, or just allowing them to see things from a different structure of mind. And so being able to operate from a possibility space allows them to feel it energetically, because coaching is so much more than brain power. It's great. Brains are needed. That's why we have part of it as part of our body, right? But also a holistic, deep felt sense, the somatics of what's possible from this creative, allowing them to tap into that. Even if you have a little floor mat, if you're with them coaching them one-on-one, little hand mat, if you've ever seen those are great. A virtual mat, have them drop their name in it, have them stand there. There's lots of ways just to allow them to see themselves up there. So it's an opportunity to go, what's possible up here? And Caring Connection can be a great vehicle to, because it's right on that line, let me just step right over that line, out of the reactive, what's possible from up here, and being able to get that. There's also some good tactics. We talked about, one was just being present in meetings. A couple other tactics that can be really helpful. And someone talks about Angela, you talked about it requires people to slow down. And so what are the tactics that can allow me to slow down? If it's a 1 minute breath work before big meetings, it's 1 minute of trying to breathe before, right? Whatever that is. There's also opportunities to go, okay, tactically, I don't ask people questions about just their life. I jump right into my meetings. Like, how could I build in just checking in with someone for 5 minutes, even though I might be dying on the inside of like, but we only have 30 minutes together. I can't believe I'm asking you for 5 minutes. Oh, it's killing me. It's a tactical allowing of just slowing down, which relates to one of my favorite people. They would say, if you take the time it takes less time. And so Caring Connection is a great way to take the time it takes. Because if we're trusting and we're in relationship, what we can do together is deeply accelerated.
Yeah, beautiful. I have one quick thing, Sarah, can I put in? And Ty, I think it's to the point what you're saying is another flavor of Caring Connection. It's the slowing down, it's the being present. It's also the giving of yourself. So for a few clients that I really admire are practicing on sharing some more of their own personal, maybe what they feel are vulnerabilities, right? Some of their missteps along the way, some of the things that they've learned. And that's a part of Caring Connection too, is being open and honest about our growth areas, about our missteps along the way, about our fears, about our concerns professionally. And then even opening it up about, this idea of what's professional, caring about the person's whole being, their life, their well-being, maybe their important connections and relationships, maybe their environment, whatever it is, like the whole person. And I have a few clients really experimenting with that because it could be an edge to show not that polished side of yourself, right? But to be transparent and open. And that vulnerability invites trust and invites sharing. And we've got to be able to put that out there and invite that back and hold the space for that. without the caption, oh, now they have to reciprocate back. Just hold that, just put it out there and hold. And that comes from a place of building a little bit more internal trust. I'm okay. I'm okay. Right. And so that's part of the inner work also.
Yeah.
I have to interject here and just say, Tyson, I loved how you called out how Patty coached us all up. And then also, I have got to call out you using that beautiful metaphor of being in the reactive, being sort of underwater, and how perfectly that aligns with us surfacing creative leadership. It was so good. So thank you for that. Okay. Listen, we've only got 9 minutes left and we have some really powerful and interesting questions. So I do want to jump into the Q&A. And so here's the first one. Traditionally, women or female identifying leaders tend to score higher in the relating competencies and relating dimensions. In your experience, what are some of the biggest challenges that men or male identifying leaders have in expressing caring connection within their organizations? And what are some ways to support them? Open to
This is from the book of Tyson. So this is not, this is from my experience and my noticing. So please take it, hold it lightly and see if it has any value. I've noticed across just the span of my life, vulnerability in men has been less rewarded, just at least for a man. So there is not that it's not that it's more rewarded for a female. So I'm not trying to say that, but there is some with growing up around don't show weakness, whether that's taught or enforced. And so to be someone, I'll call myself out. I grew up as a person with a very soft heart and didn't always go well for me. And so there is an edge of being taught and reinforced to not have a soft heart. And so that can hit home. And then for growing up, if you've been taught men need to show up XYZ way, which can be the taught not to show up with connecting deeply, forming warm and caring relationships, being compassionate. If you're taught inherently, and again, this is just from the book of Tyson, if you're taught that those are weaknesses, then it can be a very scary thing than when we learn that that's a deeply creative capacity. And so I think that there is some element in why we see shadows at play. If anyone's ever done some of the shadow work of the leadership circle profile, where we look at it, and if there's a reactive that's really, really low, there's something that we've been taught on, I better not be that at all costs. And usually that cost is a creative reflection of it. And so if I look like I'm worried about your opinion, I've been taught if I look like I'm worried about your opinion, then I am weak. Or if I've been taught that if you go along to get along, you're not a great leader, then it can have that impact of, well, if I'm trying to slow down and be vulnerable, then I'm weak. Vulnerability equals weakness. Then of course, there's going to be an edge when we say and slow down and show some heart. We go, ooh, no, thank you. So that would just be from my perspective. I'd be curious for yours, Patty.
Yeah, this is a complex, deep question. Absolutely. And I appreciate you, Ty, for saying that it doesn't mean that women identified leaders have it easier, right? Like, because women are showing strength in that area, women leaders a strength in that area, doesn't mean that it's easy either. I want to call that out. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's often despite, right, barriers and challenges of an old school system that might be more patriarchal and hierarchical. I think it takes a coming together of all of us, honestly. And I think it takes this kind of work and forming community of care, support, and practice. And care and connection is a perfect entry into this. I think the only way to really approach helping male leaders in this area and all leaders across any of the areas that are growth, because there's so many isms across our workplaces, right? Like, that's not gonna, there's so many barriers, there's so much socialization. I think there's a few things that come to mind, which are around one, asking for support,
Yeah.
Yeah, we can invite others into support, but then there's also agency in the asking for support. And the more that this consciousness rises, which I think is really important for this new leadership that's being called forward, is to ask and to invite and to create community of support. Peer support is critical. The creative journey or the journey of development, there's work that only I can do for myself, but I cannot do this work by myself, this development work. We have to go together. So
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer that we need community support, peer support, cohort work, safe and courageous spaces to stretch and to be honest and to tell truths.
Mm.
That would be what I can contribute to this in this small time frame. But I think it's a beautiful invitation, and it bears true for men building this, but across the board, the human development journey is not one that we can do alone. We cannot go
Mhm.
it alone.
Yeah. And there's a beauty in why Bob, when he designed it, talked about it being the yin and the yang between
Mhm.
that relationship and task, and true energetic flow is able to bounce between both, not valuing one more than the other. And that takes community. So I think that reactive is very much a outside in, creative is very much an inside out, which is a critical move. And I think integral is more a communal based intelligence system. And so to really foster a caring connection is, how do we create a community of support for those leaders so that those that have never danced there can dance there? I love that, Patty.
Oh, I don't want to end this, but we're coming up with 3 minutes left in the hour. And so I'm going to have to wrap up the conversation. This was fantastic, you two. Thank you so much for all of these insights, for sharing your own experiences, for addressing the questions that have come up. I I do want to say to all of you who have joined us today, thank you so much, not just for joining us today, but for joining us all year in these Surfacing Creative Leadership conversations. A quick word about Surfacing Creative Leadership in 2026. We are treating December and January as 1 month. So we're having this conversation about caring connection today, and we'll release the conversation recorded with Bill and Bob about caring connection later this month. And then we're taking a little break over the holidays. And once we get into the new year, in January, we will release the rest of our caring connection content, which is our infographic, our data wizardry video with Joseph Lehman, and the blog post that kind of brings everything together. So we've got sort of the first half of December and the second half of January are our creating, creates the caring connection month. That means our next Surfacing Creative Leadership webinar will take place at the beginning of February. We don't have a date just yet, but as soon as those details are nailed down, we'll make that announcement and you'll be able to register so you don't miss a moment of Surfacing Creative Leadership content. This series and this initiative has been such a great way to start conversations. Today was a perfect example, as Patty talked about here just at the end, being a beautiful invitation to so many things. I really am seeing our Surfacing series as being a beautiful invitation to deepen our understanding of each of these dimensions and of the model as a whole. And we can't wait to continue doing that in 2026. So next year, we'll be diving into dimensions including driven and systems thinker, integrity, sustainable productivity, arrogance, pleasing, and more. So be sure to watch your inbox and watch Leadership Circle social media for details about those upcoming events and resources, as well as all of our Surfacing Creative Leadership announcements. I really hope that you'll join us. For now, on behalf of Leadership Circle and our featured guest, Tyson Andrus and Patty Oji, my name is Sarah Stahl, and I'm saying thank you so much for joining us, for your time, and for your attention today. Please take care, and we will see you next time.